Good morning, everyone. Bienvenue. Welcome to today's National Managers Community BC Yukon session called Owning Your PMA. My name is Teresa Martin, and I'm the BC Yukon rep for the National Managers Community, and I will be moderating this session for you. My colleague Hamish McPherson is helping us today with recording. Marianne Mederick is helping us with the chat. And the NMC will be making a YouTube video link available shortly after the session. So the session is being recorded, just so you know. For the best experience possible, we ask that you please turn off your cameras and your microphones while our presenter is speaking. And you may wish to disconnect from your VPN in order to improve your experience. If you are on the phone, please mute yourself. We will call on people on the phone as well, just to make sure everyone gets a chance to participate if they want to. So while this event is primarily in English, if you wish to pose a question in French, I will do my best to assist you. Si vous voulez poser des questions en français, je ferai mon mieux à vous aider. As we begin, I ask that we take a moment to reflect on the land on which we live, work, and play. For myself, I am fortunate to be on the traditional and unceded territories of the Tsleil-Waututh, Squamish, and Musqueam nations. Please take a moment to consider the lands on which you live, work, and play. The National Managers Community in BC and Yukon has been coming together again this year after a short hiatus, and we will be putting on more sessions like these in the months to come. These virtual talks are just one of the several ways that the NMC is working to engage over 40,000 managers and inspiring leaders across the country on topics of importance to you. Les conversations virtuelles est un des multiples moyens de la CNG pour rejoindre plus de 40 000 gestionnaires et aspirants gestionnaires à travers le pays et couvrant les différents sujets qui vous sont importants. Today, I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Margot Cutcher from National Defence. Margot has been a longtime supporter and active member of BC's National Managers Community and is bringing us her 23 years of experience as a federal government manager with diverse experience, including finance administration and human resources, and including an extensive background in performance management and learning in the federal government. She also holds a master's in public administration and public policy and a newly minted certificate in adult and continuing education from the University of Victoria. So without further ado, I'm going to pass this over to Margot, and we shall begin.
Well, thank you very much, Teresa. How are you doing today? We had some technical issues early on, but I think we've sorted them out. And just doing a volume check. How is my volume?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, and can everybody see the presentation, I hope? It's up there. All right, PowerPoint Live works. All right. Well, you know the old adage about what Murphy's Law, and especially for virtual delivery, something will always go wrong. But so far, so good. Look, welcome everybody. I'm really excited to be here, and thank you, Teresa. We discussed this. I think it was in June about the possibility of doing this session because we're both very passionate about performance management. She said, "Yeah, let's do this." So thank you for the opportunity. Just some history. A colleague of ours, Lisa McAfee from Service Canada, actually did this session for the GovernX way back about 6 months ago. Really great response from our new public servants. They really were anxious to know about what performance management was all about in the federal government. And then I gratefully took her material and presented something similar for employees for National Public Service Week here at Department of National Defence. Again, a really big uptake and very much of an interest in this subject. So really happy to be here with you today to talk about this. Before I start off, as Teresa mentioned, I've been working with the government for 31 years, if you can believe it. My retirement a bit delayed by COVID, and so I'm in the twilight of my career. 23 years as a public service manager. So I really want to share some of my experience today with you, some tips, but also there's lots of wisdom in this room as well, so I'm hoping to tap into that. But if you can imagine a workplace world where there's no email, no personal devices or social media, no Employment Equity Act, no harassment policy, no talk about mental health or Indigenous issues. That's the world that I actually started my career in. Can you believe that? And over a span of 30 years, what a change I've seen in our workplace world. And performance management is an area as well that changed. And when I was very much managed by baby boomer generation, very top down type of attitude. And of course, we got a new performance management policy to make things more consistent across the federal government. And that helped a lot for defining it. But today I really want to challenge you about how to make it less of a check in the box exercise, which I think is a huge opportunity cost for our employees and for our supervisors. To make this really a meaningful exercise that will benefit not only the organization, but our employees. So let's get going. So performance management humor here. I'm sure all of us have seen this or experienced this. I always feel like I'm the lady with the curly hair, big hair, that they somehow have been able to put me in a cartoon form. So there are interactive tools. I'm hoping that you can see them, whatever version you're coming in on to join us today. There is chat box, and the video just showed that, and reaction tools. I'm hoping you have access to that on your top ribbon, as well as opening your mic. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to do that as well today to get some of your experience. So I'd like to get to know you a little bit. If you can write in the chat and don't press send exactly where you are physically located this morning for this discussion. So just prepare that in the chat, and then I'll ask you all to press send. All right, go ahead and press send. Vancouver, Victoria, Vancouver, Ottawa. Oh, got some folks from Ottawa. Kamloops. Get to know. Wow, welcome. Okay, Ottawa. Fantastic. Edmonton, Whitehorse. Fantastic. Nice to see you. Beamsville, Ontario, Victoria. Dartmouth. Oh my goodness. Okay, welcome, my friends in Dartmouth. Wow, our sister navy's over there, so I know it well. I've been there many times. Ottawa, NCR. Okay, so we really have people from across from Canada, so I'm really pleased to see that. So I'm so glad that you're joining us today. Thank you for that. So Teresa, we're going to have a little bit of a poll before we started, I think, before we go to the objectives, or we're going to do that next. Oh yeah, let's go through. Let's talk about our objectives first. So why are we here today? So we're going to explore what owning your PMA means and why it's important in today's workplace. Understand learning and development plans and how they support your performance and build your competencies. And discovered real practical tips on how to take ownership of your PMA and take a proactive role in your career success. And discuss how you could use these ideas to guide your teams as well in order to improve their PMA experience. And we really talk about experience. Teresa used that word quite a bit earlier today. I think that's a really nice way of putting it. And social learning. Let's learn from our peers about how they have been able to own their PMAs. So I just finished my adult education certificate, and peer-to-peer learning is a very rich way that adults learn. All right, so let's put that poll up, Teresa. So you should see that in your chat or in your screen. So how do you feel about the performance management process right now? And we're talking here as an employee, not as a manager doing them. But how do you feel when you are evaluated? What does it feel like? So the question is, how do you feel about the performance management process? Great, I get meaningful feedback. Indifference, fear. I don't know, I've never had one, and we do encounter those folks. So I'll just give you a second to respond there.
And if there's anybody on the phone, if you want to take yourself off mute for a moment and just let us know what your thoughts are. How do you feel about performance management process? Great, indifferent, fear, don't know, never had one.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about the phone, Teresa. I often forget our folks there, so that's great. Yeah, and feel free to pipe in anytime. All right. Well, we're still getting some response rates here, but wow, I think everybody, can they see the results, Teresa?
I should be able to. It looks like it's showing up on both the chat and also in the middle of the screen. We've got some thumbs up.
Oh, great. So wow, look at that indifference. And only 25% of us are getting meaningful feedback, and some are fear. And I found this when I did this with employees as well. A lot of fear. Someone has never had one. That's sad. Hopefully, you're fairly new. But to me, this is a huge indicator about what we've turned performance management into, indifference. And this is a huge opportunity cost for the federal government and for our employees. And as long as we treat this as a piece of paper, that's what exactly, or electronic paper, that's what it's going to be. So that's what we're talking about today. I have all right. I have a comment here in the chat. Great if it's used from start to finish. Objectives actually set up before the year, mid-year, and is done at mid-year, etc. So has anybody, I wonder, actually had their objectives defined at the beginning of the year? Often we get them by mid-year. And some years, too many managers, so not a complete picture. Yeah, so that's right. We do see a lot of movement, and then there's no follow-up. So very interesting response. Thank you so much for your feedback there. All right, we can close that poll, Teresa. So let's just talk about a bit about definitions, and please, using the chat or if you want to put up your hand, I'd love to hear from you and on mic. So what does when you've signed up for this session, you said, I think I'll take some time to do that. I know you're all busy. So what is it that appealed to you and what it meant to you about owning your PMA? Go ahead and give you some feedback in the chat, or if you'd like to activate your mic, please go ahead.
Well, I'll start. It's
Sure.
Teresa. I'll just say, when we first talked about this, I also had an experience like somebody else has said in the chat there that there was one year that I had 4 different directors that I was reporting to, and it was really hard to have a cohesive conversation through the year. So I thought, hey, this is, how can I take charge of my own career was my thought.
Mm-hmm. And Teresa, you're going to read some of the chat for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got some years too many managers, so not a complete picture. We've got having it be relevant and useful. Somebody else wanting to take charge of the direction of their career. And instead of it being something that is dry, make it fun and inspiring. Oh,
Ooh,
wouldn't that be novel?
be nice? Yeah.
Right on. And this, I
Joyful.
like this one too, keeping my own notes on my successes and growth to provide to my manager. Great point. Yeah.
Great point, Ed.
The
Talking about
PMA
that.
tells me what's expected of me. That's good too. Yeah.
Mhm. And we have Martine. You would like to, you have your hand up. Would you like to talk for a second? If you want to activate your mic, go ahead. We'd love to hear from you. And your
Yeah,
camera as well.
sure.
If you have a good hair day, go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, definitely echo a lot of these comments there, but for me too as well, I just stepped into the role of the HR advisor for no, I used to be EX, take care of EX performance. Now I'm on the other side of the non-EX. And I'm not gonna lie, I find I was, one of the ones that answered indifferent because it just doesn't feel like it does anything, and in my role, I want to change that. So I'm kind of here on both sides for me, but also as well to help out,
Great.
my department. So
Love it. Love it. Great response. Thank you for being brave enough to put up your hand.
And we've had a couple more chats. I find it fairly challenging process trying to better understand why and how to make it more effective.
Yep.
This session appealed to me to gain insight on how to drive the process and make the most of the feedback I get. And I've had many managers that don't take time to take it seriously and just write general comments. And I find it hard to advance in my career.
Yep. And I just don't buy the time part. I know we're all busy, but this is one of our key roles as managers, especially as the millennials are taking over the population of the public service. They expect feedback, and they will leave if they're not getting the feedback and sort of care and nurturing for their career that they need.
I
And
think
yeah,
just
if you're not,
one more,
yes, go ahead.
Margot.
Yeah,
As a
go ahead.
manager, we are not often given time to write them or proper training on
Mm,
how to create them for our
okay.
staff. So that's a great point and great segue into the rest of your presentation too.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go. All right, so this is sort of Margot's version of what it means. And I think we've covered many of the points here, but proactive collaboration with your supervisor and the performance management process. So it isn't a top-down, one-sided conversation. It definitely should be a collaborative effort. And understanding your role and how you are evaluated, that is what PMA should be all about, especially for virtual management. We're finding we have to manage by results. So this is becoming all the more important. Using the feedback that you get to improve your skills, find ways to tackle challenges and share ideas, and look for new opportunities. That should be your, that what you get out of the PMA. Strengthening your growth mindset to learn and acquire new skills to navigate change and be resilient. Certainly, we've seen in the last year and a half how important that resiliency and ability to change. Look at MS Teams. Could we have done this 2 years ago as a federal government to see each other visually and have a training session? It would have been almost impossible. And using self-reflection to identify gaps in your performance and career future direction. So there's going to be a big emphasis in this session about self-reflection. Again, a part of adult education, very much how we learn is how we see ourselves and learning from that self-reflection and being the driving force in your career. And I agree with with Julie that saying that sometimes my managers haven't taken the time for me. Well, then you need to take the time and be that person if you're not getting that support. And all right. So let's have, that's what owning PMA means to me. So that's what this is how we're going to structure today's conversation. So in the chat, or if you'd like to put up your hand, why is it important? So, why can't we all be indifferent? Who cares? Why is it important in today's workplace? What has changed that we should be interested in owning our PMAs? I'll give you a couple of minutes to put something in the chat, or if you'd like to reflect on that and put on your mic, I'd love to hear from you.
So there is a couple chat points. So
Okay.
for Dawn, it's top down for her org. All the positions have PMA objectives as well as training objectives dictated from their headquarters. So, that's one approach that's being taken, people are experiencing, and another is a suggestion to strengthen the right fit consideration to the performance agreement. Many managers today say they select based on right fit, which often has no linkage to any of the intel provided in the PMA. So, so that's another important reason to take some action with your PMA. Anybody
Yeah,
want
excellent.
to speak up?
Yeah. Okay. Oh, we got Martine. Go ahead, Martine. Love to hear from you.
Yeah, for me, like this, I think today, like it's very obvious that people have different needs. People learn differently. People have different personality. Like this is so complex, and so I think that being able to own your PMA and it's like this is what I need. This, of course, the employee also needs something for you, but this is what I need. You know what I mean? And figuring that out is not always easy. Like
No,
so
totally.
yeah.
So we'll have some tips on that. Thank you, Martine. And I see that Gina says, because my career is not anyone's responsibility, it is mine. Totally. That is absolutely right. Because really the organization, in some ways it's not their problem, but, you do have, it's your responsibility and you're the driver. You should be in the driving seat. Okay, so great feedback there, everybody. Thank you. So here's Margaret's version of why we should own our PMAs. So job satisfaction, that you are moving forward in your current job and career. And I'm not saying that everybody wants to be an EX someday. We're talking about lateral and or not just lateral, but horizontal satisfaction as well. So developing your skills, wanting to leave a legacy when you leave the federal government. These are all things that that are important. Prepare yourself for leadership position if that's what you want and develop competencies for your career horizons. Right? Inform conversations with your supervisor about your career path. So that's another reason why you want to own it. and address any concerns or questions about your role, especially if you're getting top-down headquarters, sort of pre-made work objectives. Learning development, again, is a key component of the 13 psychological healthy workplace. So it's definitely an important part of today's workplace and health. And again, as I said from the beginning, the opportunity cost for you and the federal government if we don't optimize performance, if we're indifferent, that is a huge cost to us. And generational change in the workplace. As I mentioned, millennials want an active role in their career and continuous feedback. Right now in BC, it is a tight workplace, tight labor market. We really need to work with our employees to retain them and keep them interested in their work and present. So those are reasons I think that it's important that we own our PMAs. So if you look at, what is the employee responsibility, it is to know what's expected out of us and what criteria are used for evaluation, and periodically engage in self-examination and the progress against our performance expectation. So again, it's just not a top-down process, but it should be a conversation, an interactive conversation, to actually seek feedback and raise issues so they can overcome challenges and improve performance. And follow up on their learning development plans. Don't wait for your boss to do that, because I bet you the dollar to donuts they won't. And if you have a talent management plan or a performance improvement plan, that too needs to be actively managed as well by the employee. And participate in performance reviews and conduct a self-assessment and document their input into the PSPM app. So there is lots of room in the app. Maybe your boss isn't putting anything in there, but you definitely should, because those are accessible when they're recruiting as well.
So I'll just jump in there if it's all right, Margot. Everybody,
Sure.
I did send an email yesterday with a sample self-assessment. Margot, you've asked me to launch a poll, so I'm going to do that right now.
Yeah, sure.
And that's just coming up.
Yep. So the question is, have you ever used a self-assessment tool to be part of your PMA, to prepare for your PMA? Just curious whether you have used this as a tool. I know in the Canadian Armed Forces, they have things called brag sheets that you prepare before you do your evaluation. So just documenting from the members' point of view of their successes and challenges. So let's see what we're saying here.
I love that
Okay.
term, brag sheet. Somebody
Yes, they
mentioned
call
in
it
the
brag
chat.
sheet. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned in the chat earlier that they did make note of their successes. So yeah, that's a great term for it, brag sheet.
And I think, we're too Canadian. We don't want to say, sort of self-aggrandize. But you know what? There's no shame in tooting your own horn, because other people won't do it for you because they just don't have the time, or they don't know. All right, so look at that. So no, most folks have not used it, and we'll be talking a little bit later about what how we implement this for your employees. But I always give this tool to my employees before we go into a conversation, because I want them to do a self-assessment tool about where they think they're at, so they can come in for a much richer conversation. So it's definitely something I would recommend to you. It's a very powerful tool, and I wonder for the folks that said yes, I wonder if you could maybe open your mic and comment on what that has meant, what this means for you, if personally or for your team.
So we have a comment that our manager only responds to the successes that we put in our PMA. Otherwise, it is based on your stats of the year.
Okay, so Julie, you're saying that you put it in yourself into the PMA. You do? Okay, all right. Anyone else who voted, who said yes to that question, that poll, who would like to say how they use it? Or and you know what? I think using that tool also takes a lot of the pressure off you when you're, sitting down to do a PMA. It always seems to be the worst time to have to do up these things, and really allowing the employee to have that thoughts beforehand, really, and that conversation. It really takes I think, a lot of work off you having to think of, what you want to put in the PMA. And Dominique, yes, please, I'd love to hear from you.
Yes, I never used a brag sheet per se, but I have a kudos folder in my emails, and
Oh,
actually,
okay.
I kind of compile all the, the thank you letters I get and things that I think are relevant for the next PMA. And before before the interview, I just go through that to remind myself what happened during the year. That's not a brag sheet per se, but
But it
it's my
is,
method.
it's feedback. Yeah, it's great. That's lovely. I think, we all should have that folder in our email folders for sure, our PST files. All right, we've got some chat going on there.
Yeah, so Kelly Miller says, I review the expected behaviors for the various core competencies and self-assess about my performance. I also break down my work objectives and get examples so that I can help steer the conversation rather than letting my manager, who isn't always aware of what I do on the day-to-day, determine the outcome. So that's a great point about steering. And then Deborah is mentioning that managers have limited time and lots of employees. So I find using the self-assessment helps me wrap my head around what I've done, where I need to go, and makes the discussions much smoother. And then we have a
That's
question.
excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a question. Are there good models for self-assessment? Is there a sample brag sheet available?
Yeah. And the one that you said, Teresa, I think was our sample of a self-assessment. So
That's right.
that was sent to you earlier on. And if you need it again, I'm sure Teresa can provide it to you. It's really just a simple, what are my challenges? What have been my successes? Where do I need support from my manager? So it's quite easy. And it is really great for employees to do this as well, as I mentioned. All right. So let's, we've got a couple of links in there in our chat. And I think that's where I got from, the internet. Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks,
And
Rossi.
I've also posted the Word document in GC Connects attached to this event. But yeah, if
Great.
anybody wants it again, just let me know.
All right, that's fantastic. All right, let's close that poll and we'll go on here. So the next part of this session is really, here we go. This is just the bigger picture of what that looks like, that handout, documenting your accomplishments and challenges. And there is nothing wrong with challenges. That just means that we need to either learn something new or apply things. And then against your PMA criteria, and then working with your manager for support. So where are the gaps that you need help with? The next part of this session, I'm just going to quickly go through learning and development. And of course, every department's a little bit different, but it's a great article, blog actually, from Jeremy Stowe. And he said, there is no bigger impact on your career than curiosity and continuous learning. And, we can see through the last two years during the pandemic how important it has been to learn and relearn and to adapt and be flexible. And these are all key pieces of our career. All right, so here's just the toolbox, a very simple graphic. There's informal learning, formal learning, and collaborative and social learning. As I mentioned earlier, that's like peer-to-peer learning and experiential learning as well. So the learning professionals usually refer to this graph. How do adults really learn? What's the optimal kind of level for organizations? And you'll see informal and collaborative is about 20%, formal is 10%, and at the bottom there, experiential about 70%. So give me a thumbs up if that's a surprise to you. Yeah, I think, it depends as we often, our learning and development plans are very focused on formal. We need training. And often, the organization will say, well, we don't have a budget, so no training for you. And then, everything becomes sort of a stalemate. And I'm going to talk to you about how important other types of learning are for your LPMA or your for your learning and development plan. So here are some examples of what formal learning is. Of course, we all probably have university degrees or college degrees, and Canada school courses. These are all formal learning. And in the middle there, informal and social learning. So that's today is very much a collaborative learning forum, self-directed. So doing your own learning online, peer-to-peer learning, mentorship, coaching. We'll be talking about these later. The GC tools, GC Connects, Collab, and the forum, which is going to be changing as well, and community practice. We just did one recently. My organization, very useful just all to get together, talk about virtual delivery and how we approach that. Experiential learning, so a key part of learning in the workplace. Participation on committees, health and safety, diversity committees, acting appointments, secondments, job shadowing, micro missions, which is through GC Marketplace. We'll be talking about that in a second. So, don't forget the Canada School of Public Service, which is rapidly changing their paradigm to virtual learning as well. I know they just got a new software delivery for synchronous learning, and they have terrific programs, free, of course, for us, virtual development programs for supervisors and managers. They have an online project management certification program. And as I mentioned, the Canada School is adapting to virtual delivery because it's here to stay, my friends. And then we have professional development and policies, and I think every department has its own tuition reimbursement and education leave with the collective agreements, second language training, and Interchange Canada. And I think we're going to have a little quick poll there, Teresa, if people have heard about Interchange Canada. Oh, there's a link to it there. So
yeah, I think if people want to just
have a look at
thumbs
that.
up, a reaction,
Yeah,
if
thumbs up. Yeah, that'd be great if you give me a thumbs up if you've heard of that. Just very briefly, it's something that I never took advantage as a federal employee, and I wish I had. It allows you to have an assignment with another organization, whether it be government or nonprofit or private sector, and you retain your pension as you go on those assignments, usually 1 to 2 years. And it just allows you to horizontally grow in your career. And what a great option for mid-career folks that are sort of looking around to do something different, and they want to, sort of build on their competencies. So I'd highly encourage you to look at that. Interchange Canada is available to all public servants, and well worth a look at, which I regret not doing. Then there's Treasury Board's key leadership competencies. These are, I just think they're excellent. I think I really love the spectrum of things that we are looking for in our leaders. And this, and they have them quite well defined, and you can use this for your self-assessment if that's somewhere you feel that you want to grow. And as we talked about, there's the GC tools, all the different collabs, internet, GC Connects. These are great peer-to-peer learning tools. And I think you mentioned, Teresa, that is going to be like a sort of one-stop tools coming up. They're just working on that, the federal government.
Yeah, so it's going to take a little while, but these tools, as many of us have noted, they're a little bit clunky and a little bit archaic.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there is efforts to redo these, and I believe it's going to be like 2022.
Yeah, it'll take a while.
2022, 2023 before everybody's on it. But yeah, it's starting, and it will be a little bit more smoother. And as far as the presentation, yeah, we'll post that on GC Connects and distribute the link when we have the link for the video as well. So we will be providing the references in a separate document too.
Yes, thank you so much, Teresa. Yeah. So GC tools, I use them quite a bit. There's also the GC Marketplace. Give me a thumbs up if you've heard about this. So this allows you to see at level mobility. It's for students looking for employment and micro mission opportunities. So these are sort of small projects, sort of like the gig economy, where you can go work for another department. These opportunities are listed on the career marketplace. So have a look at that. It's really, if you're looking to sort of grow in your career, this may be a great opportunity for you. And the Joint Learning Program. Just a little shout out. I decided in my 5-year plan before I retired that I wanted to get into adult learning and become a teacher and a facilitator for the JLP, because I love this program throughout my career. And right now they are looking for facilitators. And I can't tell you how much this has enriched my career as a facilitator for this joint program. And, some of the best training I've had on how to do virtual delivery, or how to do delivery period. And we're just doing virtual as well, of course, for JLP. And I know that Aaron, who is our one of our co-chairs of our Pacific Yukon, he's also works for the JLP program, and they are actively looking for facilitators. So I would really encourage you, as part of maybe your professional development, to get involved. All right, let's look at some pro tips here. So this is Margot's lessons learned. So the best way to come into your PMA conversation is prepared, right? And not being reactive or defensive, but really becoming prepared of what you want. Okay, you complete your self-assessment. I think the richest conversations I've had with my employees is when they have done their self-assessment and they say, this is where I see myself going. Well, how can you not have a conversation when an employee comes to you like that? Right. And, someone just mentioned in the chat that supervisors can't be there, to be fair to them and to all of us, to see all of your successes and share them. So share them with them and do document the app in the app. Do not be shy about that. Okay, and especially within the virtual environment, it's really tough for them to see you when things go right. And I always think about my children that, I always caught them doing things wrong, like they didn't unload the dishwasher. They're like, don't you ever have anything nice to say about me? So it's true that we need to, catch people doing things right. And discuss what has succeeded and surpassed look in your workplace. How do they define it? Right? And get a coach or mentor, which will help you explore your career options and pathways. And again, I can't tell you personally how enriching this has been for me. I had an opportunity. Someone was doing a coaching certificate at Royal Roads, and they asked me to be one of their guinea pigs. And I thought, oh, all right. And so I asked her. I said, I want to explore what my life looks like leading up to retirement. And I had one of the richest conversations with her over several sessions about really where I wanted to go in the last part of my career and what it would look like afterwards. So we also have that opportunity with the National Managers Community. And if you want to comment on that, Teresa.
Sorry, I was reading something else. I beg your pardon. What was your...
So
this is what not to do when you're paying attention to your fellow colleagues. Sorry,
but coaching,
Margot, what was the question?
Coaching opportunities.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, so NMC BC Yukon, I'm really excited. We've got a new program starting this fall. We haven't done this for a couple of years, and we've got 6 groups of 6 of people who are going to be learning and practicing doing coaching in the workplace. So they've got coach facilitators leading them, and they are going to be practicing as managers and supervisors. How do I coach in the workplace? And so many of our regions are running these programs. I know Ontario has just announced or will be announcing soon when they're going to be starting up. So it's a fantastic opportunity to just practice. And if anybody's interested, let me know.
Yep, excellent. So as I mentioned, that for me was a huge game changer about how I approached owning my PMA. All right, ask for feedback. It's a gift. Don't think of it as get defensive. It's really, if someone's brave enough to give you feedback, accept it as a gift. And you can take it and re-gift it or open it, whatever you like. Engage your employees who have insights that your manager just doesn't have, and ask for their perspective about how you're doing and what challenges that you have. And be ready to discuss your career aspirations with your manager. And again, don't be shy about adding comments to your PMA, because those are accessible for staffing processes. And so you want to document if your supervisor hasn't. And the 4 competencies for the public service will always be part of an assessment process. So be prepared with concrete examples from your PMA. So, the old STAR technique, the situation, task, action, and result, those are the questions that they'll ask in almost all interviews. And so be ready with concrete examples from your PMA. So use that as a vehicle for that, for your career progression. Look, I mean, I'm a big lover of learning. I wish I had done my certificate in adult education a long time ago in mid-career, because it really showed me how my staff absorb information, how they learn, the different ways they learn, and I wish I'd understood that a lot earlier on. So, prepare your options for learning and development plan for both the current job requirements and your future career aspirations, right? And there may be opportunities for tuition reimbursement there if that's where the way you want to go. But as I mentioned, don't forget about informal learning. What committees can you get? Can you be part of? What kind of social learning can you do? Yeah, and what opportunities are there in your workplace for maybe leading something on diversity or on, issues that are important in your workplace? And track your learning and look out for opportunities. The Canada School has something I noticed coming up on anxiety and transitions. Fascinating area. Track your learning and explore LinkedIn. They have an excellent training opportunities and open source learning. A lot of universities are doing that for free. So it isn't always a budget problem for formal learning. And consider micro-credentials, right? This is the hot topic of learning right now. So you don't need to go back and do your master's, but you can do a very succinct certificate in something in HR or whatever is of interest to you. So don't feel like you have to, give up 4 years of your life in order to do a big degree. But micro-credentials are very, very valuable in today's workplace. And in fact, I know the BC government often in their recruitment posters, they will ask you what recent learning that you have done. They're very interested in employees that are proactive for that. And as we talked about already, get a coach or mentor for perspective to help you and maybe it lead you to other opportunities. So there is Margot's world. Now I'd like to go have the rest of the presentation to go over to you. Tell me how these ideas could help you with your teams that I just presented. Is there any ideas that you could take that may help allow your team members also to own their PMAs? I'll just give you a second to think about that. And then please, I'd love to hear some conversation from you about this. Whether you have done it already and what you've used that's been successful would be great too. Anyone brave enough to put up their hand to tell us so how you could use these ideas for your team?
And this is a great opportunity for anybody on the telephone if you wanted to. We've got a hand up. Gina Ross.
That's great.
Hello.
Yes. Hello, Gina. So tell me,
Hi.
what's your reality?
I love PMA conversations. In this conversation as well, I just love PMAs, and I
You
really believe
do?
that yeah, absolutely.
How?
And I've been an advocate for this for the last 10 years, just like really pushing it to any employee that I've had. I think really getting a coach or a mentor. I am a coach, as Teresa knows, and I push get a coach, get a mentor, get someone who you can reflect with, because that having that reflection put back over to you really gets you thinking. So I tell that to all of my staff. But I think one of the challenges that I've noticed is, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, is that there's so much opportunity, and I find people are overwhelmed. I get staff that they want to do it all, right? And to get that focus, like really to learn about themselves in such a way that they can have that focus. Because yeah, I find that they just get overwhelmed, and then I find people just shut down because it's just so much to choose from. So
Yeah.
I think that's a conversation I have more and more now, is really how to hone in on what gets you lit, and
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, totally. Gina, and it's an interesting observation because I find as a manager, I got two type of people who had nothing in their learning plans, and then you had people with 1,400 things. And like, oh my gosh, is there going to be any time to work this year? And really, getting that kind of list isn't helpful. You really need to focus in where are my short and longer term goals, and that if it's practical, then most managers will look upon it and say, okay, we can do that. But you're right. And I think think it shut people's down when there's so many opportunities. So they really need to focus, where do they want to go with their career? What's important to them? What's their passion? I was passionate about student employment my whole career. So I got involved with UVic, the board for employers, and that really enriched my career on the side as well. So any other thoughts? We've got some stuff in the chat there, Teresa. What do we got?
Yeah, so the self-assessment guide is something that I will be sending my coworkers, especially with the mid-year opening of the year. Awesome. So glad that's going to be helpful. I used to love the PMA discussion. It was a celebration of success. When it switched to the 5-point score, it changed the discussion, especially in an organization that applied a bell curve distribution of the 4 and 5s. So that bell curve certainly does people in. I've always wondered if there's a rule of thumb, what percentage of time should one spend on learning and development? So let's maybe just address the bell curve. It sounds like you had something to say about that.
Well, of course, the Treasury Board got rid of the numeric system because of this trend that people were like, oh, I got a 3 out of 5 on a failure, right? Because I'm succeeding. It's still what we think of, though, as they don't put numbers there, but we still sort of think of them as numbers. And I'm surprised about a bell curve, a curse, I think maybe is a better word for it. You're right, because it shouldn't be all about that. And, I guess the rating part I always hated myself, but it's really about that conversation about that person. That's what's in the feedback, right? Let's not turn this into a bureaucratic paper exercise where it's all about at the end whether I succeeded plus or not, right? It's very much about taking the time with our employees, asking their opinions, getting them involved in their career. That's what it's all about. It's not about the scoring. So about rule of thumb for learning and development, no, I wouldn't say there's a rule of thumb. I think it depends where you are at your career and what's important to you, right? We're always learning. It just depends on our approach to it.
So, and there's an alternative perspective being presented in the chat there, Margot, that somebody was told that from a director's course that 70% of your time should be on core work, 20% on learning and self-development, and then 10% on innovation ideas for the future of your current org. So have you experienced that?
I love that. I haven't seen that before. So I think that sounds good to me, especially 20%. I think a lot of us would envy having that much time. And I love this idea of 10% on innovation ideas for the future. Wow. If we had time for that, I think we would be a very rich organization. And I see Dominic says we're doing mid-cycle in my department of self-assessment you shared is coming at the right time. Thank you. Yeah, I think you find it very interesting when you put the employee in the driver's seat and get them part of the process. Yes, as we said, Alexandra, easier said than done for sure, and it's a rule of thumb. So, but I love the idea that you're consciously taking 20% of your time for learning and development. Wow.
So Margot, I also have a question for you, going back to an earlier comment from somebody who's, for those of us who have objectives applied to us, it's a top-down approach.
Yes.
So do you have any suggestions about how to take ownership of our situation when that is what's occurring?
Well, I'd like to hear from the group about that as well. Anyone have any ideas about that? So, you give prescriptive objectives. What does the group think? Is there any way around that to make it a richer experience? Anyone brave enough to put up their hand? Okay, well, look, from my view, there should be flexibility within the PMA to add your own objectives as well. I think they always talk about that, and I think we should take advantage of it. And what is your passion? Where outside those, objectives can you add some personal things, right? This is the danger of turning this into a bureaucratic, one-sided process is when we don't give the employees any feedback into their objectives. So that's just my view. All right, we got some nice, looks like we have someone, Sonia, again.
So Sonia says, sorry.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I have asked my employees to add a mental health work-life balance objective in our discussion. That's awesome.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's great advice. Yeah.
great. I have to admit, when I saw that I spent 90% of my time on my core work, it was no wonder I was frustrated that I couldn't get on my learning. I felt I'd never had time to learn French, and this made me have that conversation on my performance agreement chat, and it made a difference. So awesome. Good for you.
Wow, that's a great lesson learned. And to me, it's not time; it's priorities, right?
Yeah.
Anyone else have any feedback on that dilemma of the packaged work objectives?
So we've got oftentimes there are many ways to get to an outcome. So be open with your manager to suggest how to get to the objective, even if it's a top down a directive.
Nice, Sophia. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, there's many ways to find roads to Rome, right? So maybe that. And again, adding our 2 cents worth to our PMA, never ever leave it blank. Always put your perspective in there.
And I'll just add from my own personal experience as I've gotten older, my memory's not that great. So, having the brag sheet as an ongoing
Yeah,
collection, like Dominique talked about, and some others, like having that ongoing and having the conversations with my boss. Like I have at certain times sent something to my boss and said, "Hey, I did this presentation and look at the feedback I got. Isn't this, really helpful?" And, it felt awkward because I felt like I was
I
bragging
know.
about myself.
I
But,
know. I know.
as a manager myself, I would get to the end of the year. I'm like, oh, I can't remember what all these people did. But when I got those, updates from them through the year, I could keep those in a folder for my employees so that when I went to do their PMA, I also had some trigger remember. So that's just a little piece to encourage bragging, I guess.
Yeah, and I love Sonia's comment. I used to love the PMA discussion. It was a celebration of success, and that's really what it should be about, right? And why are we making it into a dreadful bureaucratic exercise? We are the ones making it that, our supervisors and ourselves. It should really be driven by us to make it meaningful. That's my view. All right. Well, thank you for your feedback on that one. Let's just go. Let's an open mic. We still have about 9 minutes. I'd love to hear about your strategies for owning a PMA. Let's do some peer-to-peer learning here. And I'd love for you to put on your mics and put on your camera if you have any tips for your colleagues here about successes. We've had a couple of folks do that in the chat already. Um, about taking the time to learn French. And I'm telling you, there is never a good time for French or for any other learning. It's something that you have to make time for. And I remember managing a unit here at the CPS Esquimalt, and I tried to get a civilian member onto a management course, and their supervisor kept saying, nope, no time, operations requirements. And after the third time, I said, look, you're never, ever not going to be busy. You need to develop this person. He's on a talent management plan. He deserves this opportunity. So it was, again, as I said, it's not a question of time. It's a question of priority. Yeah, let's have some feedback here. Tell me what are some of your strategies on owning your PMA? And I'm happy to hear from you in the chat or open mic. There are no wrong answers here, so.
So we have one here from a guest. Any strategies that my colleagues can share to get management motivated to complete 2 to 3 years worth of PMAs after repeated follow-ups? Oh dear, that's a good question. Anybody have some thoughts that they can help out on that?
Yeah,
So,
I don't know what to
Gina's
tell you. Yeah,
Gina's
go
got
ahead.
her hand up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Gina, what's your strategy there?
well, it's getting the directors involved because we have timelines, like we have deadlines, and we're reminded of those deadlines. So going 2 or 3 years without having a PMA completed, like that's not really acceptable in today's government world. And yeah, that's not good. I'd be getting higher directors involved.
Yeah, I would too. I mean, shame on them, really. And I think that is part of your responsibilities as a manager and supervisor. So someone should know about that who's higher up, I think. But of course, it's easy for me to say that.
And
don't
what
want to risk
about,
your career, right?
Margot, you had mentioned, the key leadership competencies, and then of course we hopefully all have a copy of our job descriptions. I mean, what about if somebody was to, for themselves, just kind of pick out some of the key leadership competencies, pick out a couple things from their job description and form their comments about that, and then just send that to their manager and say, hey, we didn't get to this the last few years, but this is what I think that I've been exceeding at and doing well at. What about something like that?
Yeah, I agree. And it really makes me question about that organization, right? If that's the culture, do you want to be part of it, frankly? There's lots of, it's just not the way we should be managing now. And we need to demand that better than that, I think. All right. So what do we got here from Sonia? I have 30 minutes of bilats with employees every 2 weeks. It's dedicated time to talk about their careers. Sonia, I want to work for you. And you know what? You'll find in the federal government that people like you, we will gravitate to you to want to work for you, because that is a wonderful thing to focus on your employees like that. All right. Any other thoughts about Janelle? Oh, I'd love to hear from you. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, when you do have more absent managers or a lot of turnover, it is frustrating. I've been in that for many years where they don't really understand my role or my position or what I do. So they don't even know what my objectives should be. So I've oftentimes, I started resorting to writing it down in the app, in the comment section. I started really utilizing that to showcase my, like, I've had rewards, or awards, and really showcasing it in there. So in the event that they don't put anything, which sometimes happens year after year, at least I recorded it for myself in the system somewhere. And I think people can really utilize that, because that is your chance to agree or not agree with your PMA comments from your supervisor, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, all we're acknowledging is that we've read it, but you can disagree with your supervisor in the comments. And as I said, they are used for staffing processes. So, you should be documenting your successes in there. So has that worked for you, Janelle? Has that been a success?
I wouldn't say, like, I don't know if anybody has really utilized it for staffing reasons and that sort of thing. But I actually felt better that I wasn't being ignored or not. Like, if you get a DM's award and you're not succeeding plus, like, usually there's like, what is going on? So at least then it's in the system, and if it comes time for it to be looked at least I have it documented, right? So that just gives me peace of mind that I'm owning it a little bit.
Great. That's really nice feedback. Thank you.
And there's I've added into the chat a couple of the points that were said, Margot, and then also we've got another, that's a good way to look at the issue. Oh, that's addressed to me. Thank you. We can't force people, even managers, to do their job. We can only focus on what interests our personal needs. And sometimes you have to give them the material to just get it done, right? And make it easy for them. So make that write-up brilliant. Yes, exactly. You're not there to change them. You're there to validate you. Great point.
Ooh, I feel very inspired by that.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, really. I mean, you are there to validate you. And don't forget about that in this process.
So I'm just aware of the time. We've just got a couple minutes left. So we just have a couple minutes for questions and answers. I do have one final poll for everybody. But if we run out of time, you still have questions, please feel free to email them to me. You all have my email address from the invitation. I'll be more than happy to connect with Margot and then post some question and answers onto the GC Connects page. So yeah, just a couple minutes here. Any last questions before we do our wrap up? Okay, so we'll be posting the video to YouTube. Thank you to Hamish again for helping with that. And of course, I'll distribute the link, and I'm also going to send you a feedback form. We hope to get some thoughts from you about how this session went. Was it timely? Did it meet your needs? And if there's anything else that you would like BC Yukon to do in the future. And so, of course, we encourage you to stay connected with us so we can get you those notices. We have our annual learning days coming up on October 26th, 27th, and 28. So do watch for announcements for that from the Canada School of Public Service. And the last question I have is, if you all on the event today are interested in maybe a post PMA session, so maybe late November, so have some small group discussions where we can all come back together and talk about our successes, how did it go, and try and reinforce some of the learning that we had today. So I'm just posting that poll now if you want to vote, yes, no, maybe, and then if people are interested in it, I'll go ahead and organize that. And while that's happening, Margot, I just want to thank you for your energy around this, and the timeliness of choosing to do this now, and the participation has been really great.
It has. And thanks to you, Teresa. We're both passionate about this. And really, I'd like to, as I leave the legacy of my career, I really would like for people to take this at heart, that we can do a lot better job with this and really support our employees and ourselves with the PMA process.
Wonderful. So thank you everyone for your participation. Merci beaucoup. And best wishes to everyone for the rest of the week. And we'll see you next time. À la prochaine.
Bye-bye. À la
Thank you.
prochaine. À
Merci.
bientôt.